sense of who I was and no sense of value.
And from conversation that we were having, you were chasing job after job, just dollar after dollar, whether you're making 20,000 more, 50,000 more, whatever the amount that you were making more, you were chasing for more money that you wanted to get based off of just your own validation that if I make this certain amount of money, that it'll fill this part inside of me. And yet that part wasn't being filled, and you were trying to fill it with the prescription pills. Yes.
Trying to
Oh, we're gone.
Oh my God, you already started with me. This is amazing. And that's what makes it so great.
Yeah.
I love it. This is amazing. So welcome to the second episode of Dumb Girl Podcast. I am your host, podcaster, vlogger, trainer, and your stone cold fox, Jessica Fury. And I am welcoming a guest and a friend of mine, Amanda. So a little bit of a backstory. Amanda is in recovery from an Adderall addiction, as well as she has gone through so many different types of wavelengths in body image, whether losing tons of weight, gaining a lot of weight, being in therapy, dealing with her own day-to-day things with depression, as well as pursuing her goals in mental health as a therapist or a life coach. So we welcome to Dumb Girl Podcast, Amanda.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
It's amazing. It's so crazy. I think when I spoke to you, because you reached out to me through direct message, which is basically what everybody's doing now. They're reaching out through DM and they're just like, what are you up to? What are you doing? Or they just look at your pictures and they start to just talk to you based off of your pictures. But it's probably been about 10 years, right?
Yeah, it's been about 10 years. I think the last time you and I were together in the same room was Vegas.
At Rehab.
At Rehab.
Which is basically, I don't remember, but I would just imagine if you've ever been to Rehab in Vegas, you basically just at the beach club, probably day drinking.
Oh, there was a lot of day drinking.
In a bikini.
In a bikini.
With a bunch of, I'm from New Jersey, so I have to roll with this. With a bunch of muscles and meatheads and basically really tan men. Basically, that's all it was. I can't even remember what has gone on from then till now. So what have you been up to?
Yeah, so since then, for the past 10 years, I've been on this incredible journey of self-discovery, like you mentioned, coming off of Adderall. So that's been a huge part of my life. And then really kind of exploring where I wanted to be in the world, where my profession was leading me. And so I found myself dabbling in everything from the cannabis industry to the entertainment industry and back to the cannabis industry. But ultimately, my biggest accomplishment, I think, in the past 10 years has really been self-growth and overcoming addiction to prescriptions.
So you mentioned Adderall being a big part of your life. Can you take me as far back as you can remember where it entered into your life, or you found a place that it did become a part of your life?
Yeah, so starting at the age of 18, I was diagnosed by a psychologist as having ADHD. And they threw me on Adderall, and just to give a little backstory to that, I was already struggling with self-image, body image, trying to lose weight, and this doctor gave me the most incredible gift of this little pill because it gave me energy, it made life fantastic, and it made me skinny. And so from the start of 18 on, I really just, that was my go-to. It's how I woke up in the morning, it's how I functioned during the day. And as it progressed and my relationship with that drug progressed, I started increasing it to the point where I was running on 190 milligrams and I weighed 85 pounds and I was bouncing off of walls and always had so many creative projects going on. But from an exterior perspective, my life looked pretty good, but internally it was completely falling apart.
So can you just, because here at Dumb Girl Podcast, we want to know it all.
Yeah.
So can you break down what is 190 milligrams?
So
what is that equivalent to?
Oh, that is equivalent to, so the average probably 6 foot tall male, 200 pounds can handle about 30 milligrams. That's what your average person is probably on. So 190 milligrams is just it's basically legal speed.
So I want numbers. Am I taking like 20 Tylenol a day? Am I taking 10? Like, what is the amount that it's equivalent to?
Oh, so you're taking close to, I was taking about 10 pills a day.
Oh, wow. Was there ever a time that you thought that
that was excessive?
No, not that. Not that, like, you know, that could be the end of something. Like, taking the amount of pills
100%.
can take you to a place of you don't know what's going to happen.
Oh, that was 100% how it is, because like at some point my resting heart rate was somewhere around 150, and then any kind of exercise it would shoot up to 180. And you're familiar being in the fitness industry, that's not sustainable long term. Fortunately for me, I don't have any long term side effects from it, but definitely in terms of, you know, it brought about a lot of destruction in terms of just when you're at that high of a dose and everything is on edge, you need something to bring yourself down. And so that was what led me then to Klonopin and Xanax, and then those weren't working quite well enough to numb or bring me down all the way. And so we'll just throw alcohol in there. And that kind of combination altogether, definitely there were mornings that I was just like, how am I even functioning? How am I alive? Because the amount of barbiturates and alcohol that I'm putting into my body outweighs any of the nutritional benefits that I'm doing or any kind of good. I'm just running on empty.
And this is for about 10 years.
This is about for 10 years.
So for our listeners, a resting heart rate is between 60 and 80 BPMs, which is beats per minute. 150 is basically an 18-year-old kid running on a treadmill at a very high speed. So most people at a healthy heart rate when they are exercising is between 120 and 155 if you're running really fast. So her heart is moving at a very, very high pace all day long. And you must have been scared.
I mean, at some point, when I got to the point that I was at 190 milligrams, it actually kicked in psychosis. So I became paranoid. I thought people were watching me. I thought, you know, that I got really into needing to feel like I needed protection. I mean, it was this full blown, my mind was gone, and I was living in la la land. And my body just couldn't handle it either, because any day that I missed a dosage or I didn't take it on time, I literally could not wake up. I would sleep for 20, 22 hours.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
And how long were you up for?
Oh, I could be up for 72 hours at a time.
Oh wow, that's almost like equivalent to meth.
Oh, it is. So if there is the argument and the analogy in kind of the sober world that Adderall is just legal meth. You know, my parents were terrified. My dad, being a physician, just assumed that she's going to run this until she runs herself into the ground. You know, at some point, 190 was the most I could get legally by doctor shopping. And so that's where my addiction kind of cut off, just because I was too scared to look outside that realm. But still, you can't function. Like, your day revolves around, when am I going to get that next pill? When am I going to get that next high?
Yeah.
I don't want to fall asleep. Or, to me, the scariest part was when I started running out of them. Like, oh my God, how am I going to get to work? Because I can't function without this stuff. I'm just going to end up sleeping. I would fall asleep during work when I didn't have it. So literally my life revolved around this tiny little orange pill for 10 years.
You know, before we started recording, we were just kind of hanging out and talking, and you told me that when you were 16, you experienced sort of an onset of the depression and the eating disorder.
Yeah.
When I was 15, I took my first diet pill. This is when Stacker 2 came out, and it was like ephedrine was just okay to take until they found that you weren't supposed to. So I suffered from my own eating disorder between like 15 and 17, maybe early 18 before I became a trainer. What was going on? Because if you started taking Adderall at 18, what was going on during those teenage years?
Yeah, so during those teenage years, like, for me, the minute I took that, it not only boosted my self-esteem because I was receiving the attention I wanted, and I was receiving what I thought was validation.
Which is what?
So I just wanted to be heard. I wanted somebody to listen to me. I wanted somebody to say, yes, we're going to step in and help you with, figuring out how to get to college or figuring out how to finish high school.
And what were those behaviors around that?
So the behaviors around that were originally before the Adderall, I was just kind of going with the flow. Once I took the Adderall, I became very combative. But the thing was, I was then pretty and skinny, and that's then what I clung on to as my worth and my dollar value in this world. And so I started using that as currency for anybody that would listen. And whether that meant currency with a guy, or currency with finding the right kind of group of people, or currency with my parents, that's what I stuck with. So it went from this girl who had all of these ambitions and dreams to go on to college and make something of her life, to I am no better than just the way I look, and I have to be as tiny as possible. And then that's really, again, where this intermingling between the drug and my reality and my eating disorder kind of just took over, because nothing was ever going to be good enough. It was rock bottom.
So being a hot, basically,
Mm-hmm.
I've known you for several years now, blonde bombshell, literally, chasing a dollar.
Yeah.
And using that, and I can definitely relate to this in my own experiences, chasing a dollar, whether it be with a guy,
Mm-hmm.
based off of how much he's making, or a specific job.
Yeah.
Chasing a specific job, not based off of passion, but just off of dollar.
Off of what I needed, because the amount of Adderall I was on and everything that I was doing cost money. So I needed that. And then just I also was exteriorly, everything that I was valuing myself was what I had. So it was my car, it was my looks, it was the job I had, it was what I could tell you. If you were to sit down with me 10 years ago and ask me, like, who are you? I would have said, oh, I'm, cute but crazy, and I work as an executive assistant for, this really great family down in Manhattan Beach, and everything was what I was doing, not who I was.
And what were you actually receiving from that?
Nothing. I was so empty and so hollow.
And it makes you more depressed.
Oh my God, it makes you so depressed, because then you sit there and you see people that are happy, and you're trying to interject into the conversation, and all you can talk about is yourself and your weird accomplishments. Like, oh yeah, well, by the way, I do flying trapeze, and everybody's like, that's great, and they continue on with their conversation. And internally, I was just desperate for somebody to recognize me, somebody to validate me. But again, I didn't know how, because being on all of that and not having that developmental growth, really, I was stunted. I was just a 16-year-old showing up in a 26-year-old's body, showing up in a 30-year-old's body, going through the motions, but having no sense of identity and no sense of who I was and no sense of value.
And from conversation that we were having, you were chasing job after job, just dollar after dollar, whether you're making 20,000 more or 50,000 more, whatever the amount that you were making more, you were chasing for more money that you wanted to get, based off of just your own validation that if I make this certain amount of money, that it'll fill this part inside of me. And yet that part wasn't being filled, and you were trying to fill it with the prescription pills. Yes.
Trying to fill it with the prescription pills, trying to fill it with pulling Geographicals. And so if anybody's not familiar with what a Geographical is, it's where you pick up and move any place, somewhere different, under the assumption that by moving it's going to make life better. And so I started doing that, particularly when I hit 30 after a pretty traumatic breakup. That was my solution. Is I'm going to be making $200,000 by the next 5 years. I'm going to be living outside of California. And so that was my mission. And it was for no other reason than to prove exteriorly to somebody that didn't care about me anymore that I was worth something.
And what are the things that you started to do that started to really clear away this depression, this I need to chase this validation from others? What are the things that started to shift?
So I think the biggest shift happened. I went to my first NA meeting at 31.
What's NA?
NA is Narcotics Anonymous. So I went down to Venice Beach with that and was immediately turned off because I walked in the room and I'm like, oh, I'm not like any of these people. Like, I've got my shit together. I still have a job. I have a car. So I walked out of those rooms and continued doing what I was doing. But I already had implanted in my head that there was a better way. And then...
What did that look like?
Oh, well, I mean, that looks like going to... So in Hermosa Beach, there's an all young women's group NA meeting. And I walked into that probably 4 years after that first time walking in to the one in Venice, and all these girls had just they were glowing. They looked beautiful. They looked happy. They looked like they had their shit together. And as desperately as I wanted what they had, I was so jealous and so self-conscious that again I was like, I'm not good enough to be in this room. I'm not pretty enough to be in this room. I don't look good enough. Like. And it was this weird thing that my brain did. But again, it planted this seed because all these women came up to me and they're like, oh, we're so happy you're here. Here are our numbers. Like, you can do this. And I was like, oh, this is a little bit overwhelming. But again, it planted that seed. And so then when I walked away, it was constantly this, there's a better way of life. There's a better way of living. And I started the journey of just kind of lowering my dosage myself. But the catalyst to really the change of deciding to get sober from the Adderall was 2 years ago. I flew back to Georgia to see an ex of mine to see if we could make it work again, and I showed up to his door, and lo and behold, not only was he sober from alcohol, but he was sober from Adderall as well, and that pissed me off. I was like, fuck, I have to spend an entire week here with you and we're not going to have any kind of fun?
Both of you are sober now?
No, he was sober.
Oh,
I was not.
Got it.
But that annoyed me because he was so happy. His life had changed. He'd got this new amazing house. He had these new amazing job. He was happy. And here I was showing up, my old self, with a job that was paying 6 figures, but miserable as ever.
And now having a resentment for this guy.
And so my solution for that was, well, I'm going to steal the last bit of Adderall he has in this house.
Oh, wow.
And I did that.
Did he find out?
He did not. And I had to make an amends to him about a year ago for that. But that was the catalyst because I stole the Adderall, got on a plane back to LA, and got rip-roaring drunk on the plane, and then had to figure out how I was going to get from LAX to my parents' house because I didn't have a car down here. I remember getting to my parents' house and I was like, fuck, I don't like living like this. This is terrible. I can't believe I just stole from somebody that I really do value as a human being, but this is a new low. And that was the thing. 3 days later, I got my butt into an NA meeting, and that was my sobriety date is June 24th, 2019.
Wow, that's crazy. That's like 4 days before my birthday.
Is it?
That's a good number. But
It is.
would you say that was your bottom?
Oh, definitely. That was my stealing from somebody, because up until that point, I could always say I've never stolen from anybody. I've never needed to. I've always provided my own money. Why would I ever? And the fact that I cleaned out one of his drawers of any kind of pills, and I was like, we are going someplace we do not want to go, because if we're stealing from him, this is only going to lead to other things.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing is that that bottom also leads into a place of being so completely powerless that you're so helpless for yourself that you're like, I don't know what to do. And the only thing that I could do, and sometimes it is reaching out to somebody who can help you. And it's not yourself, it's not a book, it's not a radio, it may just be actually asking someone for help. And is that something that you had to do? And what is the action that you took?
Yeah, so I ended up getting really big. I stopped going to NA and started going to AA. It was just a better fit for me. And I found myself a sponsor who was the most caring and amazing woman I could ever ask for. And she started working the steps with me, started working the 12 steps. And it was really this moment where I had to surrender everything I was. I quit my job. I pretty much sequestered myself away. If I wasn't doing something with my sponsor or AA or in the recovery field or surrounded by people in recovery, I wasn't doing it. And I did that for 4 months straight.
And is this when you were working, you mentioned working for a family?
This is prior than working for the family. So that was interesting. I kind of negotiated with my higher power at that point. I was like, I really want to work for this ultra high net worth family, and I really want this job, and it just doesn't feel like it's coming. So I'm going to get sober. I'll get sober from everything if you give me this job. And looking back now, it was one of those, again, I was still not fully committed to my sobriety. I still had an ultimatum. I not an ultimatum, but an agenda is the best way to say it.
An expectation.
Oh, 100. I had expectations.
Those expectations are great because they lead to those nice disappointments, into those resentments, and really, like, the resentments are the fucking mother load. Literally, they just tear you down.
They do. And so that was mine. The universe literally was like, you want this job? You think you can handle it at 4 months sober? Because again, my little ego kicked in at 4 months sober and was like, oh, I got this. Nothing can take me down. We are fine. You know, I know how to do sobriety. Y'all are losers. I don't need you. Like, fired my sponsor, did not take advice, up and moved to Arizona.
Wow.
And within 6 months had started drinking again, had broken my sobriety, so I was starting to drink, didn't start using, but ended up losing that job, ended up being completely miserable, and being brought back to a place of, okay, I gave you what you wanted. Was that
by who?
By the universe. But that wasn't what you needed. Like you, and it was one of these where I've known, the minute I kind of started getting a clear head and getting out of my Adderall craziness, I really knew that I was constantly fighting the things that were good for me because I didn't want to listen. I didn't want to sit. I wanted it now. If I'm going to give up Adderall, I want the white picket fence, I want the job, I want the husband, I want the happy-go-lucky life now. I don't want to have to do the rest of the work because I figured I put in 4 months.
Well, the work is that deep internal work.
Yeah.
But you were struggling with an eating disorder for a while, and I think just from knowing you and what social media does open up for us is that we may not know the exact story that's going on with people, but just through pictures, we can just start to paint our own story.
Yeah.
And I think just from knowing you for many years now, you've experienced so many things with your body just through your own training and some of the stuff that we were talking about on the phone, that you were doing like CrossFit at one time, and you put on like a lot of weight, and then you're losing a lot of weight, and you know that's a complete, in my experience, I've experienced a lot of weight and a lot of weight loss. It's a mind fuck.
Oh, it's a complete mind fuck. It's and that was for me another thing, coming off all of this medication. I put on weight and I didn't know how to deal with it, and so, you know, that's why it took 5 years to get 2 years sober. Was I would come off the Adderall, put on a little weight, and I was like, oh, we got to get that skinny pill back. Not, we need to figure out how to eat and train healthy. But yeah, it's been a challenge, particularly I would say, you know, coming back and being in COVID and putting on weight and being comfortable in my space, and particularly in my body. I've finally come to a place where I'm okay. You know, I'm never gonna be the 90, 100, you know, teeny tiny gal I was for almost 15 years of my adult life. That is fine with me. I've come to a place of acceptance because now it's more of a place of what amazing things my body can do for me versus how can I destroy my body to make it look and fit a specific image.
What does being okay look like to you?
Being okay looks to me just loving myself. Even in those moments where you wake up sometimes and you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, I don't like the way my stomach looks today. Being confident and being like, you know what? I I may not like the way my stomach looks today, but I'm going to put on a really cute outfit and I'm still going to rock it.
And what does your day-to-day look like with that?
It comes and it goes, but for the most part, I would say I'm really in a good place, because now it's not the size of my clothing. It's not trying to constantly compare myself to other women when I'm out and about. It's being able to appreciate the way I show up authentically, not only my physical, but being authentic in my person is more important to me than anything else. And so also understanding that my body is completely different than your body, and we all have these great different journeys. So I've really come to accept the ebbs and flows of maturity and womanhood, and really embracing the body that I've been in.
So a lot of our audience are women, as well as men, but a lot of them are women of many different shapes and sizes. And I think just from knowing about this, just being on social media and connecting to many different women with different body images, as well as women that want to lose weight, they want to do this, they want to do that. Can you be specific with some of the things that have helped you, because you've had to put on weight and come into a comfortable place and adjust to that weight?
Yeah, and I'm still adjusting to that weight. I'm still adjusting to where I sit naturally. I think the biggest thing that has really helped me is taking these breaks from social media. I also did a huge social media purge, where it was, if I was following any influencer, where I would open their page and feel this dread and feel this like, immediately go to a place of comparison, I stopped following them. And that was one of the most helpful things, because I think a lot of times everybody comes from a place of wanting to be helpful and good, and we have Fitspirations, which I'm not a big fan of, because then you're like, but I like that, and that was for forever. Me, it was like, when I get taller, I'm never gonna get taller, but in my mind it was like, when I get taller, I'm gonna look like this girl, which is so stupid.
When I'm taller, I swear I will be Heidi Klum. That has been like my goal since I've been forever. Super tall, really long legs. Just give me the long legs.
Yeah, that's exactly me. I was just like, when I get taller, and I was like, it's not happening. So things that have really helped me, number one, was really getting rid of the scale. The scale no longer was my wake up, my go-to, and what defined me. Number two is really reevaluating my fitness goals and doing my training and food around those goals. And my fitness goals went from, originally it was just to be thin, and then when I was in powerlifting, it was like to lift a certain amount of weight, to now I'm at a place where I just want to be functional, have no pain, be able to age gracefully, but do the activities that I want to do. And then I think the very last one was surrounding myself with like-minded individuals. So making sure that I was having people in my life that were encouraging or knew the struggle that I was going through, that I could call it any day and be like, oh, I feel just disgusting and gross and this, that, and the other. And they would just be like, I hear you, your feelings are valid, but just a reminder, you're amazing.
Yeah, that's huge. So how is that tied into now being sober for 2 years and just being in a healthier place? How is that tied into your recovery, your day-to-day?
Yeah. So a big way that's played into my day-to-day is now any place, I have a very small tribe of people that I connect with in my life when I'm going through any kind of struggle, and showing up authentically and letting them know, hey, I'm having trouble here today, or I'm really frustrated with where I'm at in life, because it's not the white picket fence, it's not the relationship, it's not, all of the things that I thought I would have, has been one of the biggest helps that I have found. That, and also, again, meditation. I think you and I can definitely bond over that, because meditation has changed my life. Setting aside that time in the morning and the evening to really just reconnect with myself, center myself, push out all the external craziness and noise has also really helped. And then continuing my personal growth, like finding myself a therapist that was aligned with, okay, what are my goals moving forward? Like, yes, I told her, I was like, I can get any kind of job I want. That's not an issue. It's not all these other things. It's like, how do I heal these traumas? How do I reparent this 16-year-old that needs reparenting and understanding so that we can move forward fully. Because while I am in recovery and while I have that 2 years, I realized like there was still this little girl inside of me that needed that healing and needed me to show up and say, I see you, I love you, I validate you. It's time to move forward.
Yeah, I've recently heard about that inner child stuff. I have friends who are therapists, so I almost get free therapy as conversations through texting or phone, whatever. And a lot of them have said, just through my own experience in a relationship, that your inner child shows up, and it's the relationship that teaches us to bond within each other with that. Have you recently experienced that from dating in any way?
Yeah, so I have. So I think you and I had the conversation. So I recently got back into dating, and that's, nobody prepares you for dating sober. I mean, you can talk to everybody under the sun, but nobody really prepares you of what it's going to be like showing up authentically and really being vulnerable and now feeling so much. Because to me in the past, sex was just something you gave out and it didn't really matter. And I could, I'd cycle through, 30 dates in 30 days. Like nobody really mattered. And so recently getting back into it, it was hard. And I had a eye-opening and heartbreaking experience, but started seeing somebody and showed up authentically and got to know them and was very vulnerable and ended up having my first experience with sober sex with this person. And I walked away from that.
What does that mean?
Sober sex meant there was no alcohol, no amphetamines, no pharmaceuticals in my body.
Is there a deeper connection that goes on?
100%. Because like I just said, like in the past, I could kind of shut myself down with sex. It was, I didn't need to engage with you. We didn't need to do the eye contact. I don't need to be that vulnerable. You can just use my body. And this time being fully in my body, connected with somebody on that level to where there was nothing numbing anything. I felt everything they were feeling. I felt everything I was feeling. And I was not prepared for that. And I also wasn't prepared for the fact that I probably should have chosen the person I gave that gift to a little bit better.
What do you mean?
While they were a great, very kind man, ultimately they weren't looking for the same thing I was. And I found myself walking away from that experience just in tears for like a week straight. Ended up climbing Mount Whitney like 3 days later after this experience. But the entire ride and drive to Mount Whitney, I was on the phone with my best friend in Arizona just crying and saying to him, I feel so empty. I said, I feel like I gave something to somebody and I don't know what to do, because I've never had this experience where I have sex with somebody and now I actually want to get to know them on a deeper level, not just on a sex level.
Yeah, I think I would definitely say you're on your way doing the work, because if something's showing up as an inner child and then you're in a relationship, whether it be a couple weeks, sex does open something up to us emotionally and intimately, and a connection to the other person. And if it brought out that emotion, I mean, I find writing to be a huge tool for me, and surrendering to that every day. But because it sounds as if it's something so new, what is it that you're taking from this experience and applying it to your everyday?
Yeah, so interesting enough, I started doing Mark Groves. He has Create the Love. And he has a dating 101 course, which comes from a place of self-love and self-examination. So I actually started diving into that. I had purchased it prior to meeting this gentleman, but really dived into it after this experience. And the first thing he said, which I sat there in my apartment, bawling my eyes out, kind of beating myself up. He's like, it's no longer, I need to sleep with you to find out if there's a connection. It's, I need to know if we have a connection to know if I want to have sex with you. And that hit me and I was like, oh crap. But it's been going back and understanding where my childhood traumas are coming from, what my attachment style. So in the course, I learned my attachment style is anxiety. I come from a place of fear that you're going to leave me, you're going to So I need to give everything of me to you so you don't leave me. Even though, without ever saying, oh, do I actually want to be with this person?
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's that abandonment that comes up.
Exactly.
And the fear behind it, and being in a recovery program, being able to turn that attention to have the fear removed, and knowing that, and you said this before, that you're going to be okay because you learn to be okay with the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, 100%. And it's really been getting to that place also, working with my therapist and understanding that, I'm allowed to say what I need to say. So I went to this gentleman and I was very honest with him, and I'm like, hey, you're the first person I've ever had sober sex with. This is really screwing with my mind. I would like to get to know you better.
Men love that shit.
Right. They told me.
Like, let me just talk to you about all this stuff.
Right.
I don't care.
And I said all that, and his response back was, thank you so much for your vulnerability. You're an amazing woman.
That's sweet.
We had a great time, but that's just not the way things are going. And, little feisty 16-year-old me wanted to respond with, well, I know I'm amazing, duh. But I kind of sat back and was like, okay, what did my therapist say? She's like, let people show up at their emotional level and their ability to show up, and accept it. And I was like, okay, I accept. He showed up. I showed up. I did not die. This was not the end all that I thought it was going to be. Okay, I can move on. And I've taken that and I've applied it to every other aspect of my life, whether it was like reaching out to you or reaching out to somebody else and being like, hey, this is where I'm at. I think what you're doing is awesome. Like, how can I be a part of it? Or even as simple as showing up at work and being like, I need a mental health day. And accepting that my boss looks at me and goes, okay. And rather than me like putting it off till I'm just completely spent, I'm really being open and honest with people. And that's been a whole new journey. And I don't think I could have done that if I was not living under the guise and mindset of I'm not in control and my higher power is the one taking the wheel. Because like, as I told you in the car as we were driving here, like the minute I take the wheel from my higher power, I crash my vehicle. Like,
I had a client tell me a really cool story. So one of my clients has a Tesla, and I've been recently looking at cars. We were talking about it. And so my client tells me that she can not drive with any hands and the car drives itself. And I was like, wait, so you don't want to like grab the wheel when you're like on the freeway to like, she's like, no, because the car will stay in its lane. And it's almost like staying in your lane also gives you that power to know that you're gonna be okay, to put that trust out there. So every time I try to think of like me trying to control something, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna imagine I'm driving a Tesla and imagine that I can be hands off the wheel and know that I'm still gonna get to where I need to go. I love that. And that is so true. It really is surrender. You have to. It's not leading with ego, because so often when we get into this place of ego, we want to be in control, and that's where we actually come and we start trying to control other people through manipulation or through our words and actions, because we think we know that the best outcome is the outcome we want, rather than kind of just stepping back and saying, okay, I'm a really small player in a really big game. And the universe knows exactly what position I need to play and exactly what inning I need to be in or event. And it's going to put me in, and it's going to give me the support and the other players that I need to show up and be successful. And I think that from what I'm hearing and what I would make a suggestion with is that I don't think that there's playing small or large. I think it's showing up and saying, how can I be in service to others? Yes. To get out of myself, to be helpful to others, because somebody else may be going through something and I may be able to be in service to them. And it is amazing when you actually say that, and I completely agree with you. I mean, I don't know if you've had experiences when you've kind of just surrendered and then been sitting somewhere or had a conversation with somebody out of the blue and you're like, wow, I absolutely needed to be here. As shitty as like maybe my car breaking down, or I had an instance with like
like doubting that I was doing the right thing by taking this new job. And then we had an event and another individual showed up and we were just sitting there talking, and I got to share my recovery story with him, and he was just like, wow. He's like, I'm in my first 11 months. And I was like, oh, touche, universe, touche. This was the sign that I needed, that I'm doing the right thing by listening to you when you handed me this job.
I think when that doubt shows up,
Mm-hmm.
you need to look at it as a way and question, am I doing this out of something that's selfish because I'm trying to control something? Or can I know that whatever it is that I'm being served with right now, it is for the greater good, that I can help someone from this experience?
Yeah, really stepping into that 11th step.
Yeah, and I think it's also just, you know, being aware that whatever it is that we're being served with on a day-to-day basis, you know, sometimes it's like even sitting in the car and the person in front of you is not going when the light is green, and you're like, why aren't they going?
Yeah.
And then you find out that maybe, you know, their music is too loud and the ambulance is coming, or they just can't hear, or whatever. They have something going on in their day. They're not in the best place, or, you know, but just being patient and being extremely present. I mean, I can literally go on with you for such a long time. We started to talk about this in the car. You know, I shared with you about me and my microdosing experience, which has been beyond amazing. I'm definitely like in the works of getting someone on GGP to talk to me about microdosing, but my experience at microdosing has been incredible, and I hope that it does help bring you the guidance that you are looking for and continue to help you step into that place. But I think that what I would want you to share to the people that are listening is that if they're struggling with something right now, whether it be with addiction or just feeling good with themselves or in their physical body, what are some things, whether it be tools, tips, or tricks that have really helped you? Or what is it something that you've been approached with and now you look at it as an experience that you can provide them with a little bit of wisdom?
Yeah, I would say the most beneficial things for me have been really, you know, therapy, number one, but therapy is cost prohibitive. And so I think there are also great tools. It is called Clubhouse. Clubhouse has some of the most amazing forums where you can just participate and call into these therapy sessions and group sessions, whether it's addiction related or body image related. But I think the other thing that's been a great catalyst for me has been, and I'm blanking on her name, but it's a holistic psychologist and How to Do the Work. That book has been a game changer, along with Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now.
Yeah.
I honestly, on my worst days, when I have been balled up and in the most pit of depression, I will literally pop in the audiobook and sit there and just listen and cry. But finding strength and knowing that, okay, if I have to just live for the next moment, if I have to just live for the next breath, I can do this. Because at the early starts of my recovery, that was all I could do. Is that I am living for the next 10 minutes. I am showing up for the next 10 minutes, and then giving myself that praise of, you were here, you showed up. Now let's close our day with, what are 3 things you accomplished? And they could be as simple as, I did laundry, I brushed my teeth, and I called my mom. And that, for me, in the early stages of pulling myself out from this place of despair and where I didn't think I was going to be able to go on, was a good reminder, and really did switch that switch in my brain to coming from everything from, oh, I don't have it, I'm not enough, to I'm good enough, I love myself, I'm showing up the best I can today, and that's good enough for today.
That's amazing. So we're going to wrap up with one of my favorite things ever. So if you guys follow my story, you know that I'm obsessed with my morning routine. It's so necessary in my morning routine. Yes. I can literally talk about it for hours. Give me one thing that's necessary in your morning routine that sets
the tone of your day, and hopefully it can help someone else.
Yeah, so the biggest change I've made in my morning routine is I bought myself a little Amazon Echo. My phone is nowhere in my bedroom, so I wake up to Alexa, and I set her to do morning affirmations for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so in the morning, my alarm starts out with, "You are wonderful, you are loved, you are held," and I wake up and I'm like, yes, I am.
Until a guy shows up and he's like, so this Alexa thing is going on, it's gotta stop.
I'm pretty sure my neighbors think I'm crazy.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
But I set that, and then my next step is I go out into the kitchen, I make myself a cup of coffee, and I don't pick up my phone at all, and I go and I sit out and I drink my coffee on my patio, and I do not pick up my phone until I am done, because that morning patio time, after my little Alexa, telling me how wonderful I am, I get to sit and meditate and really ground myself and work with my higher power in terms of, hey, I'm just showing up today. All right, like, use me as you need me, guide me in where I'm supposed to go. Please take away any stinking thinking and crappy attitudes I may have throughout the day, and just remind me I am here for a purpose, and please use me.
That's awesome. We're gonna wrap with that. Thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure.
For
Thank you
showing
so
up.
much.
Of course. You're supporting something that I really love, and I feel so grateful. And I think we've spoken a lot about that when we were walking the dog, just having that gratitude. So I am so grateful for you being here, and thank you for visiting.